All right, so again, I'm picking it up with Lesson 9. As it says, we're going to save information about movies and actors who have acted in those movies. We can think of using two tables to do this. They're going to mention this, but there's an inherent problem with what they're going to mention. Notice it says we can think of using two tables for doing this. One table that will hold the movie information, another table that would store information about actors. We haven't even brought the actor part in yet. All right. It says, but how about the relationship between these two tables? Here's where we have a problem right now with the way this exists. And if you look right here, you may remember this, you may not, but there is a many-to-many relationship between movie and actor. In other words, one movie can have many actors. Any one actor can be in many movies. All right. What you want, what the nirvana, so to speak, of relational database design is you have no many-to-many relationships. You resolve them by putting in another table and having one-to-many relationships with those two tables. That's what we're going to do in just a second. All right. So the author says, as it is right now, if we kept it just like this, there'd be a problem. All right. And what they get to is there's certain information that's going to be darn near impossible to get because of the fact that it's a many-to-many relationship. All right, so as mentioned here, we need another level or another layer of abstraction between the actor and the movies tables. They call this role. And again, you should remember this. We did talk about this last semester. In many ways, this right here is acting as what's typically referred to as a join or a jump table. The idea is now we've got a one-to-many relationship between movie and role. We also have a one-to-many relationship between actor and role. So we resolved the many-to-many relationship we had between two tables by bringing in a third table. And now we've got a one-to-many relationship, all right, going from two of the three tables to the other table. All right. So the author says enough talking. Again, remember when you do this, you can either right mouse click. We're going to right mouse click on the models folder now. You can choose add new item, go to code and go to class, or you can just right mouse click, choose add new item and go all the way down to the bottom where it says class. But either way, this is wrong. You don't want to call it model.cs because they immediately says we define all the classes in model.cs. And here they've got movie, so I think they really meant movie.cs. I could be wrong, but when I did mine, I did it as movie. So in other words, stop this run. I'm going to come in here, right mouse click on models, choose add, just go down to class. Again, I could also do new item, go to data class, but it's the same result. It gets me to here. All right, and I'm going to call this movie. All right, you saw this yesterday. We went through virtually the same thing in here. All right, if I come down in here now, they have all of the information that we're going to need. So what do we need? In other words, this is going to be reminiscent of all three of the tables that we have. All right, well, we did it yesterday. We had one table. Since we've got multiple tables in here, what you're going to see in just a minute is we're going to need to create yet another class in our models folder that's going to be what's referred to as a context class. So I'm just going to grab all this code here. So I've got all 21 lines in here. And I'm going to take it and put it in here and just replace everything from public class movie on down, keeping that last curly brace. I think that's fine. I don't think there's any errors. I don't see any red in here. So what do I have in here? I've got public class movie, and there's my movie table, or what will become my movie table. Public class actor, and what will become my actor table. And public class role, and what will become my role table. We follow the same kinds of conventions that we have been using previously and that you learned last year, all right, as far as stuff being in capital letters, etc. So there's really nothing new there. All right, so the author says, you might have noticed that we have not added anything related to the entity framework here. Actually, these are referred to what we created in here. You don't have to write this down. I don't think you'd ever be asked this. But these things right here, they're called pocos. And it's plain old C# objects. That's all they are. All right. Some books will say that POCO doesn't stand for plain old C# object. It's plain old CLR object. It doesn't matter. All right, but the idea is right now, these will become our tables, but they're not anything right now but code classes. All right. So the author says here we're going to need to add another class. This is going to be a DB context class, but before we add it, let's take a look at what's going to go in it. All right. So I'm going to go back and do that in a second, but I want to show you this first. The first thing that's new here is you have to put in using system.data.entity. All right, that's going to be a must that we have to put in there. Secondly, and I forget to do this. This is the kind of error, if you forget to do it, you don't get an error on your screen. It's just that nothing will work. You have to remember when you create a class like this to make sure that you have it inherit from DB context. I was working on a project last year on this. I forgot to do that. I spent 2 hours and I was like, what the heck is wrong with this? So I finally went back, and it was the first time I'd opened and looked at actually what the author had done in the book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that. I put it in and everything I had in there was right. All right. And what this is basically doing in here is this is setting up the context. It's letting us know that movies is going to be a database set of type movie, which is that class we just had. Actors is going to be a DB site of actor, which we just defined. Same thing with roles. Now, it's not mandatory that you do this, but most of the time what people end up doing is when you create your classes, you make them singular. Movie, actor, role. Because it is a movie, because it is a role, because it is a or an actor. However, when you come in and you create the tables in here, you make those plural. That's just the way most people end up doing it. All right, and that's the way the author of our book does it too. So that's the way that we're going to do it. All right. So, as it says, we want to right mouse click on models, and this is fine to call it movie DB context. So that's what I'm going to do. Right mouse click again on models, add class, movie DB context. Usually the D and the B and the C, they're all highlight, or they're all uppercase. So I've got movie DB context.cs. Now, what you call that file, as far as you could name it Ralph. I mean, it wouldn't matter. Most people put the word context in there, all right? And this, depending on how you set your project up, and again, we're going to be looking at this stuff in a week or two, database first versus code first, etc. That name is very important, all right? So again, you're going to see that soon. So I'm going to click Add here. There that is. And then I'm just going to come in and grab the code. So again, we need to include system.data.entity namespace. We've got to make sure, so that's this one. That's number 1. Number 2, we've got to make sure that it inherits from DB context. And number 3, we'll have to make the entity framework aware of what we're doing. I'm just going to grab the whole flaming thing here, everything, and I'm going to replace what I currently have in here with what was in the handout. All right, again, nothing red. That's always a good sign. Still, we have no database. There is no database. We have not built a database. I'm going to tell you something, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, or it doesn't matter. I don't know. But when you come in here and you start building databases, there's probably 3, 4, or 5 different ways that you can do it. We're doing it one of the ways here. All right, that's all I'm telling you is we're going to do it one of the ways. All right, and if we go through this and yours doesn't work, you're going to have to let me know. All right, you're working from the same startup stuff that I had. So why mine would work and yours wouldn't, I don't know, but it's possible. We've had 2 ladies here that when they went over and tried to change their browser to Chrome, they're having had a problem or are having a problem when they're doing their runs. I've never seen that before. All right. So the author says, now that we've done that, we want to display the list of movies. The key thing to realize here is when you change something or you add something, normally it's going to necessitate you changing something else. In other words, if I change my controller, quite often I'm going to have to change my index file, that kind of thing. If I change a model, I might have to change a controller, and or I might have to change an index file. All right, and that's what the author's talking about here. So the author says, now we want to display the list of movies when the action method is accessed. Note again, no database is created till now for this application. And technically, not even technically, the database will not be created until we run the program. That will actually automatically create a database for us. All right? Okay. So it says, let's see what happens when we proceed to update the index method to do the same. So I'm going to just grab all of this code that you see right here, copy it to the clipboard, go back to my movie controller, all right, and just make sure I'm doing it right. Yep. And grab everything that was right here, okay, all 3, 4 lines, whatever the heck it is, and replace it with this. Okay. Now, it says here it's giving me an error for this movie context. Again, I'm going to come over here because it says show me potential fixes. All right. Again, it's the I have to add using my models class. I put that in there. That adds this. It even puts it in the right alphabetic order. And my error is now gone. All right. Like I said yesterday, when you come up and you have errors like that, that's the first thing you want to do is look at that light bulb and click on it. That doesn't mean you choose anything, but you really should look through and see, well, some of them are not going to make any sense. But hopefully you'll find one that does make sense. If you don't, you're going to have to go and then just solve it by writing your own code, debugging it yourselves. All right. So the author says here, in the above code, we are just getting a list of movies using an instance of the movie context. Well, what does that mean? There's some stuff here I don't think we've seen before, in particular the stuff here that's in blue. All right, this using, when you use the word using like this, you put it in curly braces. It's a block. It's not an if, it's not a while, but it's a block of code like an if statement is or like a while loop is. All right, and what I mean is it's saying right here what we're doing is we're creating a new database. That's what the DB is. We're doing it by, excuse me, by creating a new instance of that movie DB context class that you just saw, the one we just created. And once we've done that, then what we're saying is we're creating another variable called movies. And all we want it to do is grab that database that we just created and list out all the movies. That's it. All right. And what's it going to do? It's going to grab it here, and it's going to put all that listing into this variable, and it's going to return that variable. All right. Now, I don't know if that made sense, if it sort of made sense. If you say that sort of does, that's good. All right. I mean, this is something brand new, and we're in day 3 of 80. I know that's scary for me, too. All right. But if it doesn't totally make sense, that is okay. All right. So one of the things that they're doing in here is they're using a toList method. And as the author mentions, that's a link method, LINQ, line integrated query. What you're going to see, maybe not in this particular project, but in other ones that we go over, when you write SQL, you're used to writing things like select star from something or other, where something or other goes. All right, we're all used to doing that. When you start to use LINQ, the select goes on the bottom of the query, not the top like we're used to. There'll be a few other things that we'll have to worry about too a little later on. So the author says, as the database does not exist, the entity framework should create a new database with this name. All right. Says the classes that you have made in the entity framework should become the tables. All right. This is going to be interesting because I've already done the project. So if I've already got the, I did it earlier, so I don't know if it's going to recreate it and call it micro imdb v2.models.moviedb context 2. I don't know. All right. I could get an error. I don't think I will. But notice when you look right here. Because what I want you to do is, before we run this, we'll run it in just a second. We're almost done with this particular lesson. But when you look on here, this is part of the problem of what I see of doing code first. All right? And look at the size of those fields. Actor name, nvarchar max, which I believe is 65,536 characters. So when you go in and you create the classes and then create the database off the classes, you have virtually no control over the size in here. The system doesn't know how big these fields are, so it makes them the maximum. On the other hand, if you create the database first, you can give it a certain size, and then it'll automatically have that corresponding size in the classes. All right. So hopefully we're going to end up with an actors, with the movies, and with the roles. Not only that, when you take a look at it, it's going to have things set up for us. Primary keys are going to be set up, all right, and foreign keys are going to be set up. So that's kind of nice. We didn't have to do that. And I'm already going to start making a big thing out of this because people are like, who cares? Code first, database first, who cares? It's a big thing. If you do code first and have the system create the database for you, you can do that and virtually not have to know anything about databases because it'll all be done for you. You might have to learn to write LINQ queries, but you don't have to learn how to create databases, design databases, etc., because the system will do it for you. All right. As it says, please note that in the roles table, there is a foreign key to both the actors table and to the movies table. Also, if you look on here, you'll notice the primary key is just called ID. The primary key is just ID. The primary key is just ID. And I want to say this again, that when you automatically do it, it does it like that. But if you're going to sit there and create the database first, either you name those primary key fields just ID, or like this one could have been actors ID, movies ID, and roles ID. But you should do it one way or the other. That's the way the system expects things to be done. And if you don't do it that way, it can lead to problems. All right. All right, it says, once we fetch the data from the database, all right, we are the result, all right, or we're going to grab the result, and we're going to provide that to the view along with that code. You already saw that. I mentioned that before. Okay? Then it says, in the index.cs HTML file, we are defining the model type that we would, as it says, so we have to go in, all right, it says, we use this model variable, and again, it says there with a capital M right there. Okay. It says we want to use that to access what was passed in. All we're doing here is we're looping through. Remember, all this query, that wasn't really a query, but all that toList does is it shows us a listing of the movies. That's it. We're not going in here, we're not asking, show me all the movies that start with the word hello or something. You can do things like that. All right? And think about how you might want to do this. If you literally had a database that had virtually all the movies of all time in it, you could go and search it and you could find out which movies made the most money. Something like that. We haven't even gotten into where we talked about, for example, classifying movies, comedies, dramas, action, etc. All right, so there's a lot more things that you can do here that we either are not going to do or have not yet done. All right. So let's see, it says, as we don't have any data in the database, no movie titles will be displayed. All right. So they want you to come back in here, I believe, and do that. I'm not even going to do it. I haven't run it yet. All right. So we're up to chapter 10, where we're going to talk about CRUD. Well, before we do that, I am going to come in here. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to run the program. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all first, then I'm going to run the program. You can do the same. Now, what is bad, so to speak, about this is what I'm about to show you, depending on how your machine is configured, and they could be different. Where I'm going to show you where my database is and where your database is might be in two different places. Okay, what doesn't it like here? It doesn't like the to list. File. Did anybody else try to run it and get this error? Did yours work? Okay, the reason that mine didn't work and yours probably did is I already had the database. I'm thinking that's why it gave me that error. All right. Again, to be honest with you, I'm not worried about it one way or the other. All right. But it is 1:20. It's a little early. I want to make sure that this is working. I've got it here. I'm going to show you where it is on mine. We'll do that after the break, but let's just take a break, please, till 1:35.